Is Ricky Pearsall being a baby by not going out there with this PCL strain?
Yes.
Perfect.
I'm Doc Pearsall, orthopedic surgeon with Move Smarter Health. We are sponsored by an educational grant from Kinesi Movement. I love sports. I love talking about injuries. I take care of shoulder and knee injuries, and I operate and treat on them. And please consider this an educational, informative video only. Here we go. So, PCL strains. It's not a tear. It's a PCL strain. What are you going to do with it? Well, so we know that the PCL is in the back, right? So it prevents the knee from going this way, okay? Forward is the ACL, backwards is the PCL, okay? And, but there's obviously rotational kinematics associated with the PCL. There's proprioceptive fibers. It's technically more on the back of the knee for stability than the ACL is. The ACL is still the primary stabilizer for rotational kinematics of the knee, but the PCL is still important. Multiple ways you can tear the PCL. You can injure the PCL. If you have a PCL strain, depending on the level, it's not torn, but it's stretched, maybe it's strained, maybe it's sore. There are so many other muscles in the back of the knee and around the knee. There are so many other factors related to that. You can't just ignore the PCL. So the example of the BMX racer, they need their PCL. They're sitting with their knees bent. The last thing, they need the stability to be able to control the bike. So they are the one super athlete that absolutely has to have an isolated PCL reconstructed for the most part, okay? Could you do it with a brace? Can you play with a brace? Sure. This wasn't a tear. So you have a PCL strain and he's playing. Kind of waffling a little bit. Did I just call him waffling? I did. That's okay. He's kind of waffling, right? It's sore, back, he's off for a bit, he's back. So what does that mean? Well, it means that his knee isn't fully functional, but is it just his knee? Remember, knee is connected to the hip, it's connected to the foot and ankle. What else is going on? If you had the real world kinematics of a full exosuit or legging, and you had all the different movement kinematics available to you in the real world while he's training, practicing, playing, you would have a better understanding. Maybe it's isolated and seems to be associated with just a PCL strain, but is that the only thing happening? Could there be another injury? Is there stiffness in one section of the fibers? The leg is three-dimensional. It's not like you have hamstrings in the back, quadriceps in the front. They're not uniplanar. They are three-dimensional. So they have components. You could have tight cords on one side on different aspects. You could even have a PCL strain which is giving subtle instability, and it could be popliteus, plantaris, could be the perineals. Like, it all depends on his kinematics. Has he adjusted his motion because of that? You could throw him in a lab, but we all know that if you're in a lab being tested and evaluated, you're probably going to try and stay afloat and do your best and work differently than if you were out in the field just goofing off, right? We know that. Okay, it's a Hawthorne effect. You can read about it. So in the end, PCL, strain, and playing in and out of injuries, how are they doing that? Well, you try and rehab, you try and recover, you try and do your strength, your stability, you got to work on your hamstrings, got to work on your quads, got to work on your calf, but are they looking at the overall postural kinematic gait evaluations in the real world? And that's important. You really have to understand it because things could be very subtle. And unless you have billions and billions of data points streaming in hours, you're not going to be able to understand that. And even then, even if I had a terabyte of data running every training session from that knee with the PCL, I may not be able to interpret that. We have to use machine learning AI models. We're doing that with Kinesi. So you take all of this information that's not human interpretable because there's just too much volume of data, too many variables. You have to look at it from using the technology that we have to be able to understand all the kinematic information and the quantified kinematics associated with the real world utility of that knee. And until you do that, you may not be able to actually really determine what's wrong. And then if you keep re-injuring it and it's not recovering, what else happens? Come on. The mental aptitude. You lose your confidence in the knee. And so then you think, and then you start worrying every time you do a certain play or do a certain movement, you hesitate. That hesitation is what can actually hurt you, because that hesitation could lead to, instead of a strain, could lead to a true injury. Maybe he has a mild disc herniation that we don't know about that's actually affecting him, that causes pain down here, that someone has assumed is just the PCL strain. Maybe he has a PCL strain, but maybe the pain is referred there from something else, from the hip, from the back, from somewhere else. And then he's losing the confidence and he's not playing as well as he could. So no, he's not a baby. So for all of you that already commented down below about what I said at the beginning, just keep that in mind. Yeah, that was a hook just to get you watching. Do you like that? Good marketing, eh? Yeah, it's all Joey's fault. So, and he put me on the spot and asked me a question, and yeah, so there you have it.
So there's no brace that could help him?
Oh yeah, so the PCL, absolutely. Like I said earlier, so the PCL has braces that you can use. Now, if you're a wide receiver, the amount of mobility you need in your knee, I am not sure that a PCL brace would be something you would want to wear in a game. Now, they may wear the PCL brace if you're a defensive linebacker and you're just doing one move. Again, apologies to all the defensive linemen out there. I know you guys do a lot more than that, but I'm giving that as an example. Maybe that's 50% or 80% of what you do is this, right? But you are moving back, you are moving to the side, you might go and attack, but you're not going to be running for the ball and doing a touchdown, right? So that's really what it comes down to, is that with that brace, will he be able to turn and move and jump as well as he would like with a PCL brace? Take the best PCL brace in the world. There's no best PCL brace in the world. Even at their best, all braces, whether they're ACL, PCL, maybe at most 20-25% effective. If you look at the clinical studies that are done under controlled conditions based on limited data sets of certain types of braces done in certain players at certain times. So there's no real world applicability to it. And then they get implemented into rules and regulations about what you should or should not do based on data from a couple of studies that aren't necessarily fully generalizable. And then you could really drill deep dive into some of the scientific data and just basically tear it apart if you really wanted, right? But this is the data we have, and so we have to go by it. We have some guidelines, we have clinical guidance. No criticism against, the clinical studies that were done, but if you ask me to critically appraise the study, I could rip it apart. But how much do you rip something apart? I mean, I could rip Boeing apart for not being able to save the astronauts up there, but there's a whole different workflow associated with aeronautics and space and athletes and all sorts of things. Why am I connecting space with athletes? Because they are super athletes. I don't know. Just felt like, yeah, just superstar. So
if it hurts, you shouldn't play.
Yeah, so in the end, if he is sore and he doesn't feel 100%, it's not that his knee may not have the stability. I actually worry that it's something else. Could it also, not just mentally, but physically, like he may lose the confidence because he doesn't feel like he's playing, but could he also have another associated injury higher up? Very subtle. I have, I can't tell you the number of times I have seen patients come in to see me with knee problems. And it turned out, and this happens all the time, if you ask most orthopedic surgeons, they'll tell you something very similar. I'm not saying I'm special in that sense. Most orthopedic surgeons will find that they see patients with knee problems and then they say, well, actually, it's your hip. Oh, actually, it's your back. Well, you can have the precision kinematics to fully understand that, but there are many times, I have even seen patients have had multiple knee surgeries, even joint replacements done, and their knee pain's not gone away, and it turns out they had a cam impingement in the hip or a disc herniation that was subtle. And yet you do a proper physical exam and go through all the history, you go through the imaging, and then you get the MRI, or maybe they had one and it was subtle and maybe it wasn't considered relevant, but then dynamically it causes symptoms that are classic or gets worse over time, and then it turns out it's something else, right? So that's why the experts in the field, not just me, there's plenty of orthopedic surgeons and clinical specialists out there that really probe these complex problems to find. And I will admit, I love complex problems. Like if you haven't figured that out, you're clearly not watching my videos, or maybe you are and you just love how I talk. But in the end, complex problems are fun because it's like you're solving a puzzle, because, think about the number of injuries that come in and all sorts of stuff is going on, so all sorts of moving body parts and dynamics and variables. And well, you got to put it all together. So the more complex the problem, the more interesting it is. And in this particular case, if an athlete is sore and not at their best, they're putting themselves at risk for injury. And the worst I could imagine is not only that they injure themselves, but they miss a play or mess up a play because of that, and then they're black flagged for the rest of their career. I know that's happened to athletes in the past. Something happens, and whether it's a field goal or whether it's a catch or whether it's a fumble, happens all the time. So these athletes are super athletes, they're pro athletes, they push themselves to the absolute limit, but sometimes you just need to step back maybe. So